Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Helping the Brave. Let's bring in our guest today, Patrick Naughton. Did I get that right?
Close. Yep. Naughton.
Not. I want to say not. Yeah. You shouldn't have said the other pronunciation.
I know. I messed you up. Everybody
No,
says
you
it
messed me up.
differently.
It's my own fault. I'm a redneck. What do you want? I'm lucky I
I've
did what I did.
I've been called Norton, Noddington, Norfton, all kinds of stuff. So you're good.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I watch people come out and they go to say that they always go, Edward.
Yeah.
They never say my last name.
Right.
And it's like, so I look to watch their mouth to see what it says. I actually have to hear them, and it's funny. All right, so for only question I ever asked that's the same on every show is, what service did you choose and why?
So Army, and the main reason why is because my father was in the Army, Vietnam veteran. He only did 2 years, 1 year in Vietnam, and then 1 year at Fort Benning. So had he been Marines, Air Force, Navy, whatever, that's probably where I would have went. But it was Army because of him.
Well, yeah, I didn't realize till my son went in, because he was an airborne ranger. I mean, not ranger. Thank God he wasn't that airborne medic. I've just talked to so many people. I got to get my mouth working today. And then once because I was wondering how big the Army was, I didn't realize how big it was compared to the other branches. It's huge.
Yep.
And he went in there because with the job, because he went Air Force first, they wouldn't guarantee his job, and he wanted that job, and so he went to the Army, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll guarantee you that." Boom, and yet that was history.
Yeah, the Army is so large. I mean, we do everything, which is why, the nation usually calls on the Army for whatever crisis it is, because we just have so many different skills, and they're just so large and can handle most anything that's thrown on us, unless it's on the water or in the air.
Yeah, but that's why you guys created the Air Force.
Yeah. Yeah, we still love them. They're all right.
Well, no, that's like the Navy and the Marines. People understand. I had no idea when I joined the Navy that the Marines were a department of the Navy.
Yeah.
Their checks say Department of Navy.
Yeah.
They don't like that, but that's what their checks say.
And now you got the Space Force, born from the Air Force. So
yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with it. It has to come from somewhere.
Yep.
And that's why usually when I talk to people who were in Vietnam, I talk to a lot of Air Force people. And my dad was Air Force, my uncle was Air Force, and it's because they had to build that service up after they split it off from the Army. That's what they did. Most people got drafted into that, which I had no idea until I started doing this show.
Yeah, and then the strategic bombing, obviously, in Vietnam was a huge part that we always kind of focus on the ground piece of it, but the Air Force played a very large role in Vietnam.
And the helicopters.
Yeah,
helicopters. I've interviewed many of those people, and it was amazing what they went through and how much they were used.
Yeah, that's where it started. I mean, today, our wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, we're so used to helicopters, we don't even think twice about it. But for Vietnam, it was a novel thing, a novel way to transport troops and fight the war and project power, if you will.
Right. So you're in the Army. How long were you in the Army?
So I'm still in, actually. I'm working on about 28 years now. I have a lot of enlisted time, and then switched over. I was a sergeant, switched over, went to ROTC, and then became an officer.
What do they call that, green to gold or something like that?
No, I just yes, that is a program, green to gold. But I didn't use that program. I just got out, got off active duty, did a couple years in the National Guard, and then went into ROTC, and then came back in.
Wow. And when are you planning to retire? I mean, you're 28 years in.
Yeah.
No, but still, I mean, how long you been an officer?
Since 2005.
Okay, so close to almost.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're deciding right now. My wife and I.
20 years you've been.
Yeah. So we're deciding that right now. We're thinking next year, we could try to get full colonel, but that's like tagging on another 6 to 8 years on top of what we've already done, and we just don't know if we've got that kind of bandwidth. We have a 3-year-old, so might just be time. I think we might leave next summer. We haven't put in paperwork yet, but that's what we're looking at.
Wow, you have a 3-year-old.
Yeah,
I think it's wrong at your age.
I know. He's gonna be in high school. I'll be like 60.
The reason I say that, because we had friends of ours who had the oops child, and we're like, oh my God, could you imagine that? No, thank you.
It works out well because, my wife and I have done everything we wanted to do. So now it's like we have a 3-year-old, we go to bed at 9 o'clock anyway, whether we had him or not. So it kind of works out well.
Well, no, it's just something that now you guys are so far ahead in your careers. So there
Yeah.
are some things, let's talk about having kids later on versus
Hmm.
early on and vice versa. It just whatever works for you works for you.
Yeah. I don't know how I would have had a 3-year-old when I was, like a junior captain. I mean, the amount of hours that I was working and gone constantly. Yeah, it would have been, I don't know how people do that. It's really tough.
Well, that's when they say, my first wife or my second
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah. That's true.
Because I mean, it just unless you sign up for that, you sign up for that forever.
Hmm. Yep.
So during your 28-year career, you must have been all over the place, deployed, everything, huh?
Yeah, done all kind of stuff, been everywhere, had a bunch of unique jobs, got to I did an interagency fellowship, so I was actually assigned to a federal agency as a Army officer, and then I did 2 years in the US Senate as a legislative liaison. So I've had a lot of really unique roles that kind of got me outside of the traditional, operational or tactical assignments.
What would you say is so over the 28 years, what was your worst job and your best job?
Oh man,
And that's
usually
not
your
picking
worst.
on anybody. I'm just, I mean, you were enlisted for a while. That was
Yeah, yeah.
bad jobs back then.
It's funny when time gives you, I guess, a different
Yep.
perspective. And, we really talk about transitioning service members. So you kind of, during the time that I was in the 101st Airborne as an infantryman, it was like, oh my God, this sucks. But now when I look back on it, I'm like, oh man, that was the best unit I was ever in with the best leaders and the, the best equipment and the best training. So it's kind of funny how that perspective changes over time. Um, but
As we
yeah,
get as we get older, we
yeah,
understand things differently. I think
definitely.
it's the
Yeah.
same thing when I got out, I ran away from the service
Yeah.
and wanted nothing to do with the military at that point. And then, 20 years later came back totally to it. And then now my son's in the Army and I do this podcast, been doing it for, I don't know, 4 years.
Yeah.
It's my way of giving back. Plus we do the Operation Fire Walk for veterans and first responders to help
Mhm,
them get through their stuff, to help with that committing suicide rate, to get that down.
mhm.
It's just amazing what we need to do to help support our vets.
Yeah, it is. You know what? I did my first in this enlistment was 3 years, again with the 101st, and then I got out completely and I lasted about 6 months. Same kind of thing. I was like, I'm done with the Army. I'm done with this. I'm never gonna get back in uniform again. Lasted like 6 months and came back in and and as soon as I put that uniform on, it felt like I was whole again, like there was something missing. And so yeah, looking at retirement now that's looming. Right now I'm looking at it positively, but I don't know how I'm gonna feel after, once I'm done and I'm away from it again. Is it gonna be another hole that appears, or am I gonna be, finally satisfied, I guess?
I think we all need most military people when they get out, they need a purpose. So you need to
Yeah,
find that purpose that you're going to go do before you get out.
yeah,
Because if you don't have a purpose, you've been so busy for the last 28 years. How are you going to just do nothing?
yeah. No, I agree, and that purpose for me right now is writing, and that's kind of what I'm focusing on to hopefully, transition that into some type of full-time career once I retire.
Now, since you brought it up, even though we're
Mhm.
pretty early on, we might as well talk about it. You wrote a book, right? And what's a
Mhm.
book you wrote?
Yeah, it's called "Born from War." It's a soldier's quest to understand Vietnam, Iraq, and the generational impact of conflict. And what it is it's my attempt to understand my father's war when he served in Vietnam with the 82nd Airborne as an infantry officer, and then advising the South Vietnamese Army. So understanding his war, and then how that was always in the background of my life growing up, and then how that influenced me to then join the Army and then serve in my own war, and kind of a back and forth between both wars, understanding how that generational impact is always there. I think for veterans, one of the things that we probably overlook is the impact that our service has on our families. Um, and we, even though we don't talk about it, we don't bring it up, it's still always there. Just like my father, he never really talked about it growing up, but it was something that was always present and something that really heavily influenced me. And so I think that's something that we shouldn't overlook, as we transition into the civilian world and realize how our service is going to impact, unspoken, even how it's going to impact our family moving forward.
So what brought up the whole writing the book?
Yeah, I mean, really in about 2017, I started writing articles and stuff. And like my first articles, if you saw them, you would be just as horrified as I am by them. But and so that kind
It
of
it's
helped
about
me.
you gotta remember, you get started, then you get
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, you get definitely. And so it really came from there, and I'd always wanted to write a book. And so once my dad, he kept all of his letters that he wrote home from Vietnam to the family, and he kept the diary and so on. And so, once we kind of rediscovered all that material, that really was a genesis of trying to write the book. It took me about 3.5 years, but that's kind of where it started. So now it comes out on April 15th of 2025, so shortly here in a couple weeks. And really looking forward to it coming out and actually getting a hard copy in my hand, which I don't have yet. It's supposed to arrive on Thursday, 125 copies. So
Yeah,
we'll
that's
see
how
how
that
it
usually
does.
works.
Yeah.
Save a few of those hardcovers because they go fast.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hopefully, hopefully
know what I
that'll be
mean
a
by that? You
problem.
wanna keep your author copies you get in your first set
Yeah.
of them. Yeah, I mean, it's important to keep a couple of those for yourself,
Yeah.
because if everybody's gonna want one, you're gonna give them away, and then they're not the original first ones that came out, and so
Right. Right.
I just tell people I have to have 10 put away. Um,
Nice.
but I definitely want a copy of your book. But I definitely want a signed copy. So if I
Oh,
could get a signed
absolutely.
copy from you, and it doesn't have to be a hardbound, it could just be a regular one. But then I'll buy one and send it to somebody else
Oh,
if you so
absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. We'll send that to you.
um now I don't think you said, is your father still alive?
He is. He is. He lives in
Okay.
Hawaii, where I'm from.
God, you sound like my wife.
Is she from
Hawaii.
Hawaii?
And she lived in Oahu since she was 1 until she was about 30, and then moved
Oh,
to
okay.
Modesto, California. Yeah.
Nice. Do you know what neighborhood she lived in?
Well, she went to Castle.
Oh, yeah, she's from
K
Kailua then.
K-A.
Yeah, from Kaneohe side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I grew up on the Big Island and then, went to high school in Oahu and, on the east side of Hawaii, though.
What high school?
I went to Kaimuki, and then I went to Mililani, which is kinda central.
Right. No, she was on the other side. She got to go with
Yeah,
the other school.
the
Yeah.
nice side.
Yeah. Well, it's, they make fun of it, "Where'd you go, Castle?" "Oh, KA." That's not
Yeah, yeah.
Castle.
It's a beautiful side of the island.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, she moved from there because she wanted opportunity for her children.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I ended up adopting her 3 kids. They're my
Oh,
kids.
nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, it and so a lot of people think, "Well, you left Hawaii. Why'd you leave?"
Mm.
Because it's an island. And that's all it is an island. And it's a little different than like being in the United States where, like she said, when she first got here, she could just weird. You could drive for hours.
Yeah, yeah, it's strange, it's strange. It's beautiful, growing up there was beautiful, but it's really expensive, it's really hard to, kinda make ends meet there and so on, so that's why I joined the army and left.
Well, the reason I was bringing that up is, did he help talk about, a lot of the stuff to help you for your book?
He did, and that's kinda one of the beautiful things of the book is it's something he never really talked about growing up, as a lot of veterans do. So being able to, read these letters and diaries and then have conversations with him. And now that I had, my own service under my belt and service overseas and so on, I was able to obviously relate a lot more than I could have when I was a teenager or a young man just starting out. So that was kind of one of the really positive things of the books that came out of it is getting to really know my father. A lot of people think they know their parents, but they don't really realize that at one point, they had their own lives before they had you for growing up, and so they were, their own people back then almost. And so that was kind of interesting to learn that about him.
So when you look at Vietnam, Iraq, and all that, what was the similarities between the 2 wars? Was there any?
Oh, there's tons, tons. It's it kind of the core of it really is America and the West's obsession with this limited war theory, where if we just put the limited amount of effort forward and we expect this maximum amount of results to come from it. Same thing we did in Vietnam, it didn't work, and then in Iraq and Afghanistan, trying to fight these wars with this limited input, expecting this maximum outcome. So that was kind of the biggest similarity, but there was all kinds of stuff, and I really outlined it in the book. Everything from strategic to tactical levels, all the same mistakes that we made. I mean, it was really quite shocking, honestly.
No, I mean, because if you look at just the way we got out of the wars,
Hmm.
it was exactly the same. I mean, It was, people don't really understand it, but
Mhm.
I'm not going to get political because I do that daily on my radio show. Um, because it's just, I have a different opinion about different things. And you look at how we got out of Vietnam and how
Mhm.
the helicopters and everything there. And then you look at how we got out of Iraq and Afghanistan and how we left all the equipment, all the stupid
Mhm.
things we did and how we did. And again, it seems like it was the same type of people who were in charge almost.
Mhm.
That was the whole reason.
Yeah, I write about all that in the book. I really do. I research the heck out of it. Not only is the book a story, a personal story of our family, and how it influenced the generational terms of service and so on, but I really dug into that strategic stuff as well, and it's shocking. Like I said, just amazing the similarities between not just the pullout, especially Afghanistan and Vietnam, but the way that we executed, the way that we trained, the way that we postured our forces. I mean, it was really quite shocking.
I just saw a series that was on it's on Apple. It talks about
Mhm.
the Vietnam War. Have you seen that series?
Yeah, is that the what is it
The
called?
ones
What
it's
it,
more of they talk from the both sides of the Viet Cong side, how they had no clue understanding why we were there.
yeah.
They thought
I
we were
haven't.
invading their country and they were there, they had to fight to the whole thing. And
Mhm.
it's like, wow, how two people are in this war who have no idea why they're fighting and what we're doing there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've seen that series. I forget what it's called, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Vietnam something, of
Yeah,
course.
it's a good
But I was
series.
like, I was like, because it's I wanted to understand it was a different take of on the other side talking about the Viet Cong, and they just wanted, and they talked about it, and the Americans talked about their other side
Mhm.
too, and they actually had real footage from films during that period of time, and just how they lived and how they did everything and as a community and how they were so close. Just
Mhm.
same thing that happens with us when we're in war together with our brothers and sisters, that we get so close and everybody gets connected. And that's unfortunately after the Vietnam War and after in the 80s, up to the 80s into the 90s until just the last 2000 on, where
Mhm.
you have ways to stay connected where before you didn't have ways to stay connected.
Mhm. And it's so different, how that connection works. I mean, my my father's generation, the way that they kind of stayed connected was through like VFWs, American
Right.
Legion, things like that. And now our generation is not as interested in those types of organizations. And so the way we're staying connected is like this, podcast and social media. And so is one better than the other? I don't know. You could argue it either way, but different way that with the way that generations of veterans are trying to maintain that connection once they're done with their service.
Well, I think a lot of the like Veterans of Foreign War place of VFW
Mhm.
is, and please don't take this wrong, but they're
Mhm.
exclusive to people who served over,
Yeah,
who actually had
yeah.
to go to who didn't get out right before the war, did other stuff
Mhm.
that could have been up to that war, but they're not part of it. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people are more, they want to be part of that helps all vets, not
Yeah, no,
just
that's a very good point. Yeah, that's absolutely a really good point.
because with the Operation Firewalk I was putting together, it was like, why don't you do it the VFW? I'm like, because they're exclusive,
Yeah.
and that's not a dig on them. That's their right to do whatever they want. But
Mhm.
if I want to help all vets and I want to help first responders, because so I was not combat. I got lucky. I missed it
Mhm.
by 2 days, and I
Mhm.
say lucky because if you don't have to go to combat, you're lucky.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because
Mhm.
you see shit that you can't unsee. I saw shit I can't unsee from just being how I pulled duty and what I did at the
Mhm.
hospital and other stuff like that, from being an EMT and other stuff, that I understand how first responders are committing suicide at the same rate vets are.
Mhm.
And so
No, it's good points. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
and just having that understanding to where now I'm for veterans majorly, and then
Mhm.
first responders to come in and get help also, because there is nobody out there helping them.
Mhm. No,
Just
it's excellent points. And service is service, right? And
right,
and for someone to disparage somebody else's service or to try to make them not feel, to be like you said, it's pointless and it doesn't make any sense at all. Um, the fact that we're now an all volunteer military and everybody raised their hand, especially over the last 20 years during a time of war, knowing that they possibly could get or most likely would get sent to war. Service is service, no matter what you did.
right.
So yeah, that's a really important point and distinction that you've brought up.
And it's one of those things where, because I mean, a lot of non-combat vets
Mhm.
don't feel like they should go get help at the
Yeah.
VA. and or get their benefits because or what they're feeling isn't the same. And
Mhm.
you have you have to understand that. Don't, like you said, you sign on the line to
Mhm.
fight, go to war no matter what. If you
Mhm.
were lucky enough not to have to go to war, that shouldn't be held against you
Yep.
for not, because I mean, when I got out, I had my bachelor's, I was finishing up my master's. Everybody's like, "You're gonna go in back in as an officer." I said, "No." Because one, the Navy is all, if I was an officer, I was on a ship.
Right.
Line officers, that's all it is, right? Medical officers, other
Mhm.
stuff are not always on ships, but all line officers, ship based. That's, there's more billets on
Mhm.
ship than anything else, or submarines. I did not want to do that. I got so
Yeah.
lucky as a corpsman that I didn't have to go on a ship because I went to a specialty school that was not on ships. And I
Yeah.
found that out after I was in. But I'm just saying, that's so at that point, I had no way. If I would have been Army, I probably would have, because it
Mhm.
would be different. I could pick other types of jobs. I didn't have to worry about getting on a ship.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good points.
So I thought I saw another book on your thing. It was like fire something. Did you write another book?
No.
Oh, I could have swore I saw something that had a book. Well, you wrote articles in like Army history and other
Yeah, I
stuff.
got a whole bunch of articles, yeah.
I could have swore I saw something where you're holding up a book.
Oh,
That
that was a chapter in a book I wrote.
Persistent fire.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I said I researched a second or two
Yeah,
on.
no, that's good, that's good, yeah, good job.
I was like, God, I could have swore there was another one. So you said you wanted to be a writer now, right?
Mhm.
I mean, so what would you write on?
Yeah, I mean, this is my first book, obviously, so trying to see try to figure the whole market out, kinda like, I think how you did with your book, try to figure out how it all works, trying to figure out how marketing works, doing podcasts, things like that. So really exploring all that. Right now I'm in a safe space because this is obviously not my only way to make a living. So if the book doesn't do well, it's not really a huge deal. So trying to just figure all that out and see if I can find a way to, post military to change that into a way that I'll make a living and keep writing books, writing, history is my jam. So trying to find other history books to write, primarily is probably going to be military history since that's what I'm interested in. But yeah, just feeling it all out right now and trying to figure out, as I transition. I mean, one of the biggest things I always hear from, like podcasts like this talking about transitioning is to have a plan early.
Mhm.
And so that's what I'm trying to do now, is trying to set myself up so it's not such a shock when I take off the uniform.
And so what I've found from talking to authors and people who've done books
Mhm.
is chapter or series of books does
Mm,
better
mm,
because it builds, and then you build your audience. You build your audience. It kind of like um, the the source, the whole so I wouldn't say Source of the Stone, but
mhm.
all the books, that one that was a movie for so many books. I can't think of that. It had the sorceress and everything in it.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, move on. Anyway, a series of books. All right, it's
Right.
one of those days. I'm getting maybe too old for this, but you just have to, if you have you're going to do this book on this thing and this book, and then you can pre-sell. Hey, I have this is
Mhm.
going to be a series. This is what's
Right.
coming up. People can expect what's going to happen because you selling through Amazon, making a few bucks per book, you don't make much money. I
Mhm.
don't care
Yeah.
how much you sell. And I don't know if you know this, but I just found this out. You could, on your website, you could actually have it go directly to uh, a different place to where
Mhm.
they can order a book and you make more money through it.
Hmm.
Still, it's the same place you upload your book through.
Yeah.
Ingram Spark.
Mhm.
You can actually get a link, and then instead of where it says pre-order from Amazon, you
Mhm.
could go to your own site, and then you get the money off of it.
Huh. Yeah, my book's through Casemate, so it's a traditional publisher. Um,
Oh, there you go.
yeah, so it kinda works a little differently.
It totally differently because they own it now.
Yeah, they own it. I only get 10% per book. So, not but they do a lot of marketing, I guess, is the
Yeah, how
trade-off.
did
I
you
don't know.
find out? How did you get connected with Casemate?
Yeah, I try, so I kinda, the way I set out to do it, I did all my research prior, and I think that's probably a suggestion for all veterans, is research the heck out of whatever you wanna transition into. So I kinda had different, avenues of approach, the ways that I approached it. A number of my first thing was I was gonna try to get an agent, and so if that didn't work out, then I was gonna try a smaller publishing house, and then if that didn't work out, then I was gonna self-publish, through Amazon or whatever. So I tried to get an agent. I must have pitched, a proposal to probably 200 agents, got no bites. Got some responses that said, "Hey, thanks, but no." And then I tried the independent publishing, and like Casemate, they're a smaller publishing house, primarily focused on military history books. They're real big, and they're the biggest distributors of military history books in the US and in the UK. And so tried them and a number of others, and actually got 3 offers from 3 to 3 different of those independent or smaller publishing houses, and Casemate was the best one, and that's how I got to them.
Gotcha. No,
Yeah.
I just because I did my own independent. I use Scribe Media to help me,
Mhm.
which isn't inexpensive, but it helps you get the right book, the right cover, everything else.
Yeah.
But if you're self-published, you own everything about it.
Yep.
When you
Yep.
get somebody else, you don't own it anymore, so you can't really talk about it. There's certain
Mhm.
things. I tell people it's like if you ever watched Seinfeld, it's like when Kramer sold his story
Yeah.
to Peter, and then he couldn't even talk about it at parties and
Yeah.
everything else. And that's the
Yeah.
same thing.
There's
Yeah.
there's like pluses and minuses to both, right? And that's kind of the beauty of the publishing world today, is that it's so much easier for an individual to get their voice out there, to get their voice heard, and get their book out there because they can self-publish. So it's like a double-edged sword, because it's so easy to get it out there, but the other side of it, the market is so flooded with books now that it's hard for a reader to get the reader's attention to try to get them towards your book. So definitely pluses and minuses for both avenues.
And you're right, and that's why the question is why are you writing the book? And that
Yeah.
is the same reason why you do anything, you need to figure that out.
Yeah, and number one is for myself. I enjoy writing, and so I love doing it, and so that was number one. And then number two is to test the market out, like I said, to see if I can maybe make something out of it, and that's really the 2 biggest aims right now.
Patrick, that wasn't a question for you. I was just
Oh, I'm
making a
sorry.
statement. I know, I was just making a statement to everybody
Yeah, yeah,
listening. By the way, the reason you do a book is you have to figure out why you're doing the book in the
Right.
first place. Just like you said, you gave us 2 reasons,
Yeah.
but you have to figure it out. It's just like why you have a podcast. Is your podcast for most podcasters, the whole purpose of having the podcast is to build their business.
Mhm.
It's not, and then other people like me give back. That's why we do Helping the Brave. I'm also in Rotary. I do a lot of different things to give me back to my community, because if it wasn't for people who gave to me, I wouldn't be where I was in life. And so I think it's important for us to give back, and especially help veterans as much as possible.
No, I agree. I agree.
And so again, and when I wrote my book, it was just to get my story out so I can help more people buy homes, because it was so important for me to get people into homes, because that's how you change the trajectory of your life. For most people, you can build personal wealth, and you can build passive income and other stuff down the road.
Yeah, we used that VI bill, or via the VI home loan.
VA loan,
It's an awesome thing. Yeah.
And what's nice about that now is with the Blue Water Act is it goes up to 2.5 million, and it's amazing what you can buy with it. And what's nice is you can, I tell people, go buy a duplex, triplex, a fourplex with it, and then live in one of them. And then when you get transferred, do it again, and then do it again, and do it again throughout your whole career. And then you build just enough real estate to have income from it, because some people don't even want to deal with real estate, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's one way to build income over time.
No, I think your message is really important in that, as you're in, you really got to understand those benefits that are available to you while you're still in, and when you're going to get out. And one of them is that VA home loan, GI Bill, all those types of things. I mean, it's really important to walk into the military understanding all that stuff that you can get before you get out, because you really want to start forming that plan well ahead of the time before you get out, planning to use those benefits and so on.
Yeah, because what people don't realize is during the 80s, 90s, 2000, the VA home loan was horrible. What I mean by that is just wasn't enough for most areas to buy a house.
Right.
And then they changed it, and it went by, it was by county area. And again, certain counties, especially California, but you could be in a state that has a county right on the line of the county, and across the street can get 800,000. On the other side of the street could only get 400,000. Which is that's just, and there's not many of those places, but I'm just saying that's the problem. But now they changed it to where it goes off the conforming loan limit minimally, and then it goes up to a jumbo size, which is still a VA loan. It's just a different VA loan, and you can reuse it constantly as long, up to a certain amount, and then you just, if you want to buy more, you have to refinance one of those off. So.
Yeah,
but it's that program plus the benefits you get when you get out. You need to go. Since you brought it up, I'm just going to say it. I'm real adamant about it now, because it's amazing how it can change people's life by getting those extra benefits that you deserve and you need to put in for, and have the right company help you.
Yeah. Yeah. And the book's theme is the generational impact of, conflict service. I mean, one of the things about the military is, if you play it right, and you save your money and you do the right things and you use those benefits, I mean, you can up your your caste, if you will, quite easily. You know, you can start out from maybe a poor rural area or an inner city. By the time you leave the military and exercise all those benefits and stuff, I mean, you're like middle class, moving yourself up. I mean, it's really amazing.
Yeah, because what most people don't realize, I mean, in that big push from like well, I'm talking like some, and with you have at least a 10% disability, you
Mhm.
don't pay the funding fee on the VA home loan, which
Yeah.
is a lot of money you can save.
Yep.
But they go from 10% to 50% to 70, 90 is not that big of a deal
Mhm.
to get those benefits, or even to 100%. Most people think 100%. This is how I was when I first got out. I thought 100% because I was dealing with people who were
Mhm.
100% disabled doing the VA loan. And I'm like, okay, they must not be able to walk. They must not be able to do anything. Must be laying in bed. No,
Right.
that's not
Yeah.
what that means. That just means there's enough points, enough stuff that got you to 100%.
Yeah.
And you could be still working full time and doing everything, but being at 100% disability.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
good stuff.
And then you need to put in for that stuff. Everybody,
Yeah, absolutely.
even you, Patrick, when you get
No,
out.
I know. I'm learning all that stuff now, starting to go to the retirement briefings and so on, getting myself
Because I
set
mean,
up.
100% disability in a lot of states means you don't pay
Mhm.
property tax on your houses.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
it's
huge.
huge.
That's
Yeah.
say, I mean, in some states it's 70 and above. It just depends on which state it is. There's just so
Mhm.
many, your kids can go to college for free.
Yeah.
If you're 100% disabled, you can go to college anywhere for free. If you're
Yeah.
10% to 99, they can go to school for free, but they can't make enough,
Yeah.
more than. So there's so many benefits to make sure you get your benefits for you and your family. Not only the amount of, 50% is about $1,000, but
Mhm.
if you're married you're talking 100%, $4,000 a
Mhm.
month. And that's not counting your kids.
Yeah.
Your-
No, I gotta
yeah,
do it for my 3-year-old, definitely.
yeah, that's right. All right. Well, Patrick, thank you for coming on and talking about your book and talking about
Mhm.
your story. And we'll look for it again. It's coming out April 15th. Go
Mhm.
check it out. Go pre-order it on his website. And also the name of the book is Born for More. Anything else you want to say, Patrick, before we go?
No, I mean, I've got, kinda 3 advice for veterans if you
Sure.
wanna stay on that long, okay. So, the things I've learned in 28 years of service for veterans is really three big things, and that's 1, when I was a military fellow, with one of the federal agencies, they would hand these big stacks of resumes and put them in front of me, like 80 to 100 resumes, and when I would look at them, if I would just black out the name, everybody's resume kinda looked the same. So I would, for my first piece of advice for veterans as they're transitioning is find ways to make your resume jump out, whether it's volunteer opportunities, whatever it is. If you wrote a book, I mean, whatever it is, try to find your resume, find a way to make your resume kind of jump out from the stack. Um, the the second piece of advice I have really for anybody, not just veterans, is that make people tell you no. Um, any type of situation that you're going into, I mean, do not be afraid to, ask for the salary that you want, ask for the position that you want, the opportunity that you want. Do not feel that, I shouldn't be asking for that, or that's not the right thing to do or the right thing to say. Make people tell you no. You have nothing to lose except for them to tell you no. So every time that somebody has told me yes for a unique opportunity that I've gotten, there's been 20 no's. So that's my second piece of advice is make people tell you no. I mean, do it tactfully, obviously. And then my third piece of advice kind of snap links onto that second piece is that imposter syndrome is a very real thing. So once you take off that uniform and you kind of lose that identity a little bit and you find yourself in the civilian world looking around in a room wondering, do I really belong here? Yes, you do. So imposter syndrome is a very real thing, and just think back to all the experience and all the challenges that you went through while you were in the military. And yes, you 100% absolutely do belong in that room. And that's all I've got.
That's it. All right. Well, one thing I always say is the only person who doesn't have imposter syndromes is imposters.
Yeah. Good point.
That's it. If you really, and then remember, any hate you get online is just from people below, not from
Yeah.
above.
Yeah. Very true.
Just remember that. And I always tell people, if you get hate while you're doing stuff on social media, whatever, that's okay. Just embrace that, because that's how you build your audience. They'll come to support you and help you out.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Patrick, thank you again for being on the show today. Appreciate
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Thank you.